Ready when you are. Alright. The move fast, break things philosophy is a way for tech companies to essentially do a sloppy job in whatever new like innovation or new product that they're trying to test or trying to release into like the public without actually having it be refined or to a certain degree like to have a baseline quality before it's released to the public, right? Few things we're gonna do. Firstly, let's just illustrate how this move fast breaking is. Like, I think aside from what the impulse I already told you, I think the illustration of how like tech products come to market is most like in this case would be that you have tech companies have a concept, they pitch to investors to get money for initial prototype, and then they have then they start with the early access phase where they get like maybe a selected people to test out the product, then they might release it to the public and have like then start their beta testing phase where they collect feedback from users on whether this thing like worked or didn't work or whatever problems they had, and iterating on it and like changing whatever needs to be changed until and this trial and error process repeats until the product is like a usable final product which can be released to the market, right? I think in this case we have to note that because it is a trial and error system and because of what the impulse already says, we think that failures that are likely to happen. I don't think that op can just can argue that even if you're testing things, they are not likely to fail, because we think that they will fail at some point, and a lot of times they will fail because tech products are not something that you can just refine from the get-go and make it work, right? Secondly, let's look at how these projects are funded, right? Most of the times, two instances. One, when you look at startups, they're usually crowdfunded. They have because they don't have the funds themselves. They have to do things on like Kickstarter or whatever in order to get money to start to move the project in the first place, right? So what happens in this case when you have something that continuously fails or like, takes a amount of time for iterations before it is something that is usable, means that people most likely would not fund it through all the way because they are unsure of when this product will actually be useful and when this product can actually be applicable or integrated into like the industries they're coming from or whatever, right? I think like if people just see something that I'm giving money to this but it's not becoming something that I can use, why am I continuing to give money to it, right? Secondly, established tech conglomerates and like when they come out with products like this, right? I think they most likely how it works is like they have investors, board of directors that contribute fund towards these projects, right? And a lot of the times how this works is that it relies on the amount of funds you get relies on the stock price and like the investor confidence within your product or whatever you're doing. Meaning that if it is likely that we don't see how we don't see that these products will be a success in a lot of the times because we see a lot of tech startup like products that come and go and fail because it's just not like it's not that easy to get a successful product, means that investors don't have confidence in whatever you're doing, they're less likely to continue funding the project, and they're less likely to fund further projects that you want to do in the first place, right? Then let's talk about why it is that this move fast break thing philosophy is necessarily bad. Because one, it holds companies less accountable to the problems that their products the product they are testing necessarily make, right? Because so how this would work, probably you will make it public and you would like ask anyone that if you want to be part of this program, you can join this program, right? So most of the time, because companies understand that there is this point of failure and like a probability of failure, most likely they're gonna make you sign a liability waiver, right? They may make it like you won't be the company won't be liable for any like bodily harms or whatever that you will face when you test this product. Given that these tech conglomerates are most of the time like capitalist in nature, they will most likely just have this on a wide scale of everything they try to do in order for them to just in order for them to just have a bunch of people test out their shitty products but have no regards on their safety in the first place, right? But even if that is not true and you cannot just the companies won't do this, we don't think that in any cases, even if like people who use this product end up getting harmed, they don't have any ways to get reparations because even if you want to sue them, they will sue the fuck out of you and you will never win in the first place, right? I think moving on, why is this ethical violation necessarily bad? Because we're not only talking about the next iPhone where they want to trial and error with like no new features and right, because this looks like things like medical technology, technology that like it's critical to like human lives or like or like the operation of like you know the new AI like AI in cars or self-driving cars or whatever, right? We think in these cases it's very detrimental at the point where you have things that are prone to failure because this can directly cause harm to person and cause injuries, serious injuries or even death. Because if you have, let's say, a new tech for surgery or something that might go wrong, but you have to test it on people because testing on other things cannot get the same result as you want to on a human, means that it's likely that a lot of these people might just get injured or die. And it's like, you know, like how like self-driving cars, they might crash into things because the AI is not refined enough to detect things, or the batteries and then explode. I think we've seen that with a bunch of Teslas, right? Okay, yeah, and then this just ties into the last point of how like you cannot hold these companies accountable even if this happens, and most likely this will happen a lot because now they have no really incentive. Like now they uh, yeah. So I think the counterfactual on on Gulf side, it's just that we just have better in-house R&D before we actually release the product. We move slow and we break less things, maybe, right? What this looks like is that you have your in-house R&D, in-house testing, and you have like safety safeguards already in place. I think all of these are like reported within your accounting and all of this, which shows investors that there are progress being made and there is a better chance for this to succeed and not having it fail in the public eye where it might change the perception of the company, which my second speaker will talk to you about, on how even if these things are innovative under their side, because of how bad it has been, people won't give a shit about it, or the applications of it will be less because people don't care, right? And lastly, waste of resources, right? It's just you spend unnecessary resources trying to get this. Okay. Yeah.
All right, thank you for the fine speech. Now invite the leader of opposition, whenever you're ready. Here.
It's the same one, extra charger, iPhone.
What?
iPhone charger got.
iPhone already.
Yeah.
Got partner lah.
I don't have the cable, sorry.
Oh.
It's fine.
Okay, maybe take PPOS, maybe one, maybe none. Okay, no limit. Okay, PPOS. Starting in 3, 2, and 1. So in Yanqing's world, all the technology is perfect, but on our side, people are just going to die to own it. I think that's an incredibly uncharitable characterization of what's going on. I think rather when it comes to safety, no one is going to buy products that are going to kill you. No one is going to put products in the market that's actively going to harm you. I think on the first level, these products necessarily have to bring an immediate benefit to society. That's why we're moving fast, we're pioneering fast. We want to solve problems on the ground right now. This probably looks like, we'll talk about that later. So instead, then I think the harms that we are dealing with looks like what are the laws that should surround the usage of this product. So we're talking about open AI and like ChatGPT. Should these things be allowed to be used in your college assignment? Should authors and writers be allowed to use all of these things? Who then gets the credit for the usage of these things? When it comes to like environmental technologies, what is the amount of like carbon emission that is allowed from these things? What like industries and what sectors of the economy are allowed to use these things? How should they be regulated? I think these are the harms that we have to deal with. And note that these are not very bad harms. A lot of the time these are things that can be solved post release of the technology. There's always going to be an incentive to want to keep to make sure these things are done properly in the first place. The delta in this debate, we release the technologies first, deal with the consequences and outcomes later. On your side of the house, you make sure you're working together with the law people and the other technology sectors, and you release a full product, something that has the full package already there, so no one is confused about how things are done. Additional framing. One, where are these philosophies likely to be adapted? I think they happen within like sectors that have a lot of demand for innovation. So it's not happening in places where we already are extremely comfortable with the way things are done, but rather in places like the environment, for example, where climate change is a problem that we're trying to solve. We want new and new solutions that are more effective, solutions that are safer, because people are having harmed on the ground right now. It looks like R&D to data analytics and like risk assessment, where people are losing a lot of money because of the inefficiency of technology in this department. So we want better technology so that people lose less money. This is an immediate benefit that we are trying to solve. There has to be an urgent need to solve these problems, and these are oftentimes also like pioneer technology. No, a lot of these times, in most cases, these things are likely to then garner a lot of attention from individuals on the ground, because if they are not garnering attention, then they're probably useless technology and we don't need them. So the point in which this debate has happened in a place where we're making some form of change, technology has to be innovative to some degree, meaning it's getting a lot of attention, meaning lots of people are going to care about it. The next piece of framing I want to talk about is what is the best way then to implement safeguard. I think it's through public testing, by letting people use it and getting information back from individuals. I think you also need a diverse pool of testers, people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of problems, and how the technology that you're introducing is something that can cater to each of the individual needs, something that's actually going to solve the problems that they are experiencing. They have to defend a world where people are unfamiliar with how this product is being come out, because suddenly you're being like introduced to a whole host of things. There are all these rules and like this one particular set of technology where this is how you use it, these are so and so rules, no exploration, follow these guidelines and these procedures that we have given you. Our alternative then is that the technology gets introduced first, you implement it in ways that are useful to you, implement it how you want, don't kill people obviously, but if there are any problems with it, bring it up to individuals. I think importantly, since we have better amounts of testing on our side of the house, because it's really being released into different communities, different people can experience it and give different levels of feedback based on their specific needs, then you can then diversify this technology into whatever way you want. Note also that problems are not things that are static, because problems change over time. The point in which you take so much time to cater to everything and make sure it's a perfect product when you release it, the problem might change. Meaning, on our side of the house, we get solutions to problems that are immediate on the ground. You move fast, solve the problem, you break something, okay, create a new piece of technology, create laws and regulations that solve it later. On the other side of the house, by the time they invent the product and they come up with all the regulations to use it, the problem has evolved, the problem has changed. I think necessarily then, the weighing here is an impact on problems when it comes to like climate change and like big scale environmental or like risk assessment things. It's important that the problem that people are experiencing should be solved right now, because these are things that are harming them right now. If you're going to solve the problem 20 years in the future, the problem is not likely even to be the same thing, just because you give them a full package. I think it's less useful to the people who are experiencing harms right now. Four arguments then, I think so at least. Yeah, four. One, opportunity for small companies to break into the market. Small companies only exist when they can fulfill certain economic niches, because big tech companies are always going to completely dominate everything, right? iPhone is always going to be better than my Xiaomi, I guess. So when the point is they don't pioneer, they don't move fast, there's no incentive for them to create something that is new and like innovative. These people are never going to be able to break into the market, because you're always going to follow what the next iPhone is doing. They become cheap, imitative copies, using established methods that work. They don't pioneer, they don't create new things, they don't have any form of innovation that is useful to people. Secondly, then on the urgency of problems. People are suffering right now, they have like problems that need an immediate solution, and the point in which they have to wait so long to be able to get these things, they're not going to be able to do it. So the point, it's better to have an immediate solution to it now instead of waiting so long. Yeah.
If you concede that problems change fast, how is it sustainable for small companies?
If problems change fast, small scale companies are moving fast, they are breaking things, they are solving the problem that they have. Even if these small companies or big companies are taking a long time to want to solve the problems that is happening, the problem is always changing. It's better if you solve it immediately, adapt to it later on if you have to. If people are being harmed by it, it's fine, you can always create another thing instead of waiting 20 years to solve a problem that by that time is likely to become obsolete. Third argument then, and I think this one is important, diversity of innovations. All sectors of technology have prevailing narratives. In Malaysia, your driving wheel is on the side that it's on left, and like your phone is built in certain ways where the home screen button or like everything is in certain areas or like places that is familiar to individuals. These are things that are already cemented and integrated and entrenched within this particular sectors. Meaning that any form of change that you are trying to implement long term is likely going to follow these similar things. If you have a problem with your energy, for example, energy consumption, and you want to try to solve it, if you take some long term policy, you're likely to then use things that you are more familiar, things that you're more comfortable with, and you're going to integrate with all these people and try to come up with regulations and laws, meaning you're more likely then find a solution to try to reduce carbon emissions, for example. You're unlikely to explore a completely new side of technology, a completely pioneering, innovative aspect of technology, where you could try to like implement more greener forms of technology or alternate forms of getting energy rather than using what is already there. I think this is important because on the other side of the house, even if it doesn't take so long to get out of the and they're able to solve the problem and the problem doesn't change, the type of innovation that happens is more static, it's less diverse, it's always based on a fixed set model. Meaning on our side of the house, we have better ability to just diversify into more things, and this is how the point of it, even if it's not useful, it can still get integrated into different parts of the economy. Second, putting out these products allows for integration to different sectors. Let's say the product sucks, it's okay. People have access to it, people can mod it, it can become open source, you can use it for your own particular needs, you can use it in ways that is beneficial to you. You don't necessarily have to have only one form of technology. But also on the other side of the house, when there's only one sort of technology available that's being made years from now, let's say it's a faulty CAT scanner like they say, then hospitals are forced to buy all of these things, even though it might not necessarily be something that is required to them. On our side of the house, when you release these smaller scale technologies immediately, they can choose whether they want to integrate it or not. Oppose.
Alright, over my speech, I invite
GPM. Here.
Who spends eight there?
Oh my.
Okay, starting speech in 3, 2, 1. First, some rebuttals about things that Elo said that don't really appear, right? First thing that Elo comes up and tells us is that somehow tech companies have altruistic intentions, but in reality, the reason why tech is pushed faster for people is not because that people need it, but because tech companies need to cycle these kinds of products in order to make money to continue their research and market activity in the first place. So therefore, it's very convenient to assume that tech companies are they do it for the people instead of actually funding for themselves, right? Next thing, Gulf, they say that our burden is familiar with technology. But here's the thing, right? The reason why it's like that is because if we oppose the philosophy to begin with on our side of the house, it means we're looking into making if they claim that under our side, when we give the technology to people will be confused as to why it uses it. I think this is very uncharitable because part of the refining process, it also involves the end user experience and making sure that people understand how to use it and use it the best way possible as well. So I don't think that was yeah, proper whatever you say. The next 3 points we're talking about urgency that needs solution problems. Again, convenient premise where there is urgency, where they will trade off safety for the fact that we will trade off safety for urgency. I don't think you can credit it without like ample trade-off analysis to begin with, right? Even if we do have static development on our side, at the very least we still get the benefits of the fact that it doesn't harm people, and furthermore other points from our side of the house, right? Okay, so come to the main part of what I want to talk about here, right? We see that failure is more likely to happen on their side because of the philosophy of move fast and break things, right? Because the philosophy states that itself there is caution to the wind. How does this look like, right? Failure to being first due to the lack of refinement means rejection of the concept. It pollutes the market because of negative press, right? Where do we see this? We've seen this happen. The idea of NFTs and cryptocurrency blockchain technology completely. The fact that it still has practical applications in digital currency or even other stuff within the realm, it's inaccessible, because the problem with it is that the name has been sullied by all of this negative press surrounding blockchain technology. We don't get to access these kinds of things because investors don't want their next product to be attributed towards things that have such negative press to begin with. People don't want to engage or invest because of the bad press and the potential of failure, because without people engaging with it because of the bad press surrounding it, the likelihood of failure is more likely to occur in this philosophy. Because first of all, failure is more likely to happen, and then because of that, people are more likely to reject new tech because of that, right? So the main point that I want to talk about here is a bit economical. The tech sector becomes too volatile in the stock market for publicly traded companies. All right, even if not, there's a community of investments that are disincentivized for new projects without sufficient testing that likely takes resources, right? So here's the analysis, right? So two contexts here, because right, this point deals with context of tech that doesn't even have extremely harmful impacts. It's just economic in the sense that if tech companies adopt this philosophy, it makes them very vulnerable towards stagnation of tech. Because at the end of the day, people don't invest in, because investors are risk averse. They don't invest in things that will bring them failure. And this kind of philosophy means that more likely than not, failure is going to happen. Means that people are less likely to invest in tech, and therefore it's problematic. The tech sector in status quo is a high growth economic sector in the global market. There is an incentive and urgency for people to be investing in tech because people need innovations, people need new tech. But people also require safety, people need security, people need surety in their lives. And that is something that this philosophy goes against. So two contexts here. If we talk about a setup tech company engaging in this philosophy, it pollutes the goodwill and confidence in the tech sector. Investors become more wary because they're risk averse, less investment in new tech, which is difficult for this kind of new tech startups to be developed without resources to sustain, like the fact that more likely than not, these new tech ups, they sacrifice like their original 9 to 5 corporate jobs in order to pursue and develop this kind of tech on their own dime or using crowdsourcing. Less likely to find angel investors or even potential investors and to buy materials to build and test new tech. So therefore, new tech does not get developed if this philosophy takes hold, because there's a high potential for failure on their side of the house. Even if established tech companies practice this kind of philosophy, it makes too much losses in walking back and apologizing and settling lawsuits. Even if to a certain extent they have some form of legal impunity, the fact that the bad press is going to affect your stock prices. And if you have bad stock prices and you're unable to dial back on that, stockholder confidence is going to go down, which means that the company is more likely than not going to cut costs. They're going to cut their liabilities. They're going to have massive layoffs, and the company might eventually shut down because of that. On the comparative here, at the very least, under our side, if smaller companies are able to still get the investment despite not turning out a product for something people use, because at the end of the day, what investors want is confidence, surety, and security. So what they want, and this is easily achievable through status quo. You can constantly report to them and tell them like what this tech is going to do. You can give them beta testing. You can keep the stockholders happy by keeping them constantly informed. They might push for certain faster things, but arguments can be made in order to make sure that the products are shipped out and given to people in a safe and operable manner. Right? So we think that this exists, and these policies do exist in status quo, and there is an incentive structure for investors to not want a faster return on investment by trading off the rollout of bad technology, right? On the comparative for established tech companies taking too long, at the very least, if your business model is unsustainable to not take into account that research and development takes too long, then there's something you must be doing wrong. It's not the fault of the tech, it's the fault that you're running a company wrong, right? This philosophy imposes a very high opportunity cost, because failure would mean losing opportunities such as people losing confidence and attention, to which usually means the death of tech, or at the very least the loss of profit from the original designers. We think that even though somewhere down the line others people might revive such tech, but there's like so much bad press surrounding it, it's unlikely for it to even be involved. Also take note that under their side, even if people give consent, right, you have to take note that human testing is also likely to involve people who can't exactly 100% consent, because more likely than not, you take advantage of poor people who are forced into choices because you offer them money, right? We don't think that this harm is symmetrical, because on our side, we're likely to engage in other safer ethical testing before we actually involve of people who can't actually make a consensual choice to be tested upon. With this, crowd to Paul.
Alright, thank you for your wonderful speech. I enjoyed it.
Vignesh, him, I'm being recorded, so nothing too insane will come out today.
Going off.
One recording already kena bakar because of that, so kena bakar di pisang already. You guys verbally lah, not through chat.
Come on.
Huh?
Come on. We're not ready. I think got one time. Got one still ready.
I'm going to take down the weak point of Gov in my debate at the start, because I think that there is an inherent tension, I think a bit implicit in their case. Because their PM comes up right here and says that accountability metrics are important. There are things like long-term, like preservation of things are important, and all of these things that you need to be contesting in the round and really need to take care of it. That investors don't want to invest in the short-term tax. I'm going to disprove that later on in my speech. But then in second, they come up and say that economic agenda is something that they can leverage in their speech, and it's something that is winning on their side. I'm going to explain in my speech. If you want to argue on the basis of economic agenda, then it is something that is fundamentally untrue for two key reasons. The first being, and this is going to put a lot of pressure and engagement on this point from deputy. The first being that the point where you no longer have quick releases in batches that typically have like a little bit of each thing which Kavi talks about. That is the point where you get the death of economic incentive within the tech industry, which is a nascent industry, and this will be the extension. But secondarily, that it trends towards monopolies, meaning that you can't co-opt the benefits that you want about economic leveraging, because it trends towards things that lead to bad user interface in the long run anyways. Never product post. I have two questions and rebuttals are interrelated into it. The first is on this idea of an economic agenda and who can necessarily win on it. They say and contend, I think, 2 to 3 things. The first, that the volatility of the market means that it is something that is no longer good. First panel, I'll point to the status quo, whereby these things increase actually do happen in status quo. OpenAI does follow this principle of like you break things first, but then like you just muscle the industry as fast as possible. Yet there's no like hesitancies of investors into these things in the first place. I think the point where this is true, I don't see how this argument stands in status quo. But fine, debate the line, fuck it, let's use like intuitive analysis and try to debate about it, right? I think, right, that it occurs on scale. It is not an absolute that they can go up in their debate, and I think we're perfectly fine with making the concession that needs to happen. Because if it is true that the tech is going to fucking murder someone when you release it, we argue that number one, that means that it is an extreme and there's an evaluation onto whether you want to invest into the tech. We don't think that all tech is created equal. That sounds a bit like eugenics, but sorry guys. We don't think that all tech is created equal. We think that some techs deal with things that are more like culpable things and like worse harms in the event that something goes wrong. But we're telling you that we're perfectly fine with making the trade-off that some of these things don't happen, because we don't have to defend on our side these tech ever actually going into the industries and being things that are sold or marketed. Not the motion panel. We merely need to defend this ideology within the tech industry. I think insofar as all the rebuttals don't really contest on this basis, we're already winning. Because the defense then is merely that all industries have this idea. Maybe one of them come up with a tech that is like going to kill someone, but we argue to you that that is the investor that becomes the safeguard within these things. Because if it is true that the priorities of deputy is what they claim it to be, then they're just not going to buy the tech. And if they don't buy the tech, that's perfectly fine, because that's tech that probably shouldn't have happened in the first place. I think then secondarily though, Kavi's speech becomes really important. The point where he talks about what kind of industries have an urgency to have these things in the first place. We are not then saying that all industries shouldn't adapt this behavior in terms of like whatever the fuck the philosophy is called. What we are saying is that different industries have different nuances as to how investors and consumers view this technology. Maybe some things have an increasing demand and an increasing emergency into like penetrating the space and dealing with issues. This looks like the environment. This looks like certain niche niches of the market that needs desperate dealing, we tell you that we're perfectly fine with that because that is the instance where the investor is likely going to be incentivized into buying into this tech and taking a gamble. But we're telling you that in most secure markets, we're perfectly fine. Not everything that adapts to this philosophy does not end up getting sold in the market. I think the point where this is true then, it means that on economic agenda as a volatile market, they need to prove why, if investors are so prudent and smart, they're going to buy every objective tech in order for, sorry, I forgot the name. Yanqing's tech, in order for Yanqing's mechanism to be true and people die, and that is the worst harm, they need to prove linkage and investors are stupid enough. I think that their whip needs to knife the deputy in order for this to work. I don't think they can win on volatility. The second is on less investors. Panel, intuitive with me for a second. If you release products in batches, and this is what Kavi talks about, we're not like releasing this completely unfinished game, you know. It's like releasing the demo first, then the chapter 1, then the chapter 2, then the chapter 3, or whatever the fuck that looks like in tech. So this looks like releasing things in batches, things in certain packs of things, which is what Kavi talks about, instead of a whole complete product. The point where that is true, an investor, which then let's wait, which is the investor's decision going to be? Are they going to look at this tech and be like, oh, this is an unfinished product, I'm not going to invest in it? But that is simply untrue. The more like probable market and how it's going to interact with individuals is that they're going to be like, okay, this is the proposal, this is how we plan to roll out the tech, and then the investor will decide whether they want to buy into this individual like chapter 1 of the tech. I think the point where this is true, you get better investor like this in the first place. But secondarily then, they want to talk about gambles, weigh this panel, which is a bigger gamble, a tech which is promised to finish in 20 years time but has no release to the public and no testing in the public, or a tech that's released to the public and is then proposed to investors. The point where this is true, I think we win on more investors, but even if we don't, I think that's fine, because if we don't have more investors, guess what? The point where you have this philosophy, you're more likely to take gambles, you're more likely to take risks, you're more likely to have sunk costs. If we lose one or two investors, like one or two tech companies in the process, perfectly fine insofar no one actually cares about the individual tech company right now. That's fine. Maybe they end up in bankruptcy, one or two companies, that's fine. Secondarily then, on urgency, I want to say two things that they have. Number one, that there is bad press and that is bad. I've already responded to this on investor analysis, but the second is on accountability. It is simply not true that accountability is something that you can completely co-opt. I think that harms still manifest on their side, but just on a smaller scale. But I want you to weigh this then on harms and like vulnerability and urgency panel. Maybe it is true that our product leads to harm to the point that you release it. But every second they don't release a piece of tech or they don't meet investors to try and deal with problems, that is when the problems prevail in society and negative utility is inferred into every individual is being harmed by it. But then let's get into the extension. I'll take a PR for it. 3, 2, 1, no. Okay, so let's say panel that it is worse on the graph in the short run and that it up on the short run and it leads to some negative utility on the user interface on the bottom line. Why is it still better? Number one, because Gulf's world uniquely creates a monopolized market and that is bad for the reasons I don't really need to explain to you why it's true. So why is it true? Personally, the idea of limited capital of the startup and small companies. Note Kavi talks about this when he talks about diversification in a niche market. Most of these small companies operate on a very, very small scale and operate on very, very minimal budgeting. Secondarily then, what do they capitalize on? They capitalize on quick movements. When you're a small company, you don't have sunk costs into certain industries. Secondarily, you have more willingness to diverge because you want to have an edge over your competitors. That's why Samsung chose to like be so diverse and try to compete with Apple by going to niche markets. Third, you have an interest to move in because that is the point where you can profit maximize. If you're a big company, you don't have to go into these industries because the marginal revenue that you get is going to be smaller. The point where this is true, I think it becomes a debate about how this like becomes worse on their side. Becomes worse on their side, number one, because you're disincentivized from doing these things because it's a philosophy that you do not adapt. Note that it doesn't matter if you get investors or not. What matters is you penetrate the industries and the successful one get investors, but then it leads into investing utilities. I've already given you the mechanism for what they care about, but why is it worse on their side? Because the point where investors have the same incentives on both sides of the house, monopolization uniquely occurs the point where you have less incentive to move into new markets as a tech company, less incentive to try new things. The point where this is true, it creates hegemonies in the market, and in the long run it becomes worse on their side. One reason, because in the long run, when there's a hegemony in the market, that is the point where you're no longer incentivized to create new products, that is why you're no longer incentivized to be a good producer. Exclusively then on our side, you get the safeguards in place, only time the, you get the safeguards in place in order to prevent monopolization. I think that is the point where we win the debate outright, because we prove that we can prevent this even if there's some harms, never further to propose.
Alright, thank you for the fine speech. Now I invite Kavi.
off also, that's fine.
It
Right.
depends which is.
Too
So you're
deep,
giving reply, right?
Huh?
That's
You're
true.
giving reply, right?
Oh yeah.
Sit down.
Oh, you can't say reply, okay. It's okay, just don't take too much time between speeches. No, after this, close.
Alright, starting my speech in three, two, one. So the main thing that side opposition has came up with and detectors is that there's this sense of urgency that with things being with things being in such of a dire situation, there's an urgency to move fast break things, and thus, but and that there's a need for quick innovation to happen in order for us to save her. But I believe that coming from government with that is the framing that is that would ultimately lead to their downfall. Because understand that urgency at the end of the day, in areas which are in need of urgent technological innovation, these are areas where people are also uh, these are areas in which people are also the most vulnerable, or people are or where these people are more readily acceptance of whatever piece of technology that they throw at them, in which and these are also areas that have already suffered like irreparable damage, like for example the environment in terms of environmental pollution, or like people or like cancer patients who already have like tumors in their body, like uh, uh, looking for like some semblance of hope from these technological companies. So why is it bad that that you move fast and break things in these situations? So like firstly, this firstly like it sub it subjects them to like exploitation, easy exploitation by these companies, in which like they are very readily acceptive of like or whatever piece of technology that they throw at them, and also like they would use whatever because like they are in need of like an immediate solution. And how is that bad when like these solutions, more likely than not, are not the finest of are not the finest are not the final form that they can be, and are often in need of trial and error. So are very like in these places, uh, when error happens, more often than not, these is when like these the damage done by these errors are also irreversible, and also harming, and also putting like these situations in more in like in a worse off situation from before they use the piece of tech. Like for example, what like hydro energy generators malfunctioning and ruining the seabed, or like cancer patients like uh, not
A
reacting
man.
well enough to like the new piece of technology, the new piece of technology that that they've introduced. And these so like uh, so like with like by trading off like the welfare of these situations and these people, they may they might somehow be able to achieve some sort of innovation, but we don't think that that trade-off uh, is worth it in the case in which like state government can offer like a better solution for it. So how does state government exactly offer a better solution? And also before that, we also think that innovation should not happen side opposition kept panting side opposition's entire case is that innovation happens at the end of the consumers. When the consumers use their tech, they give feedback to the companies, and then only the companies see the fault in their technology, and then innovate it. We do not see that we don't think we think that innovation happening at the consumer end is inherently like faulty, and it does not bring about the full potential of the piece of technology that you're innovating. So like since when is since when is the consumer responsible for the research and development of a piece of technology? We don't, and that also ties into like how like my first speaker talked about like how these people are more readily exploited by the companies, like ethical violations, and also what's it like stagnation of technology. Yeah, sure.
So which is it investors are so prudent, which one you're depicting Ocean, that's why you get all the benefits on your side? Or is it that they're not prudent, that's why you get hydroelectric
Wait,
dams
I'll
only it's
move
good
into
for
the
you?
investor class later lah. Right. So like we don't think that it's better it's good that innovation is happening on consumer end. Under our side, under the side of government, it's better that there would better innovation comes along when like uh when these technology are tested in a lab, and like the companies are held entirely accountable for like for anything that happens through the use of the technology. When they are held more accountable, it's more likely that they run more tests, make sure that the piece of technology is functioning better than what they're supposed to do, than what they're supposed to be. And in these lab testings is all would then only bring about like the full potential of like the piece of technology before they're released to public use. And also like with better lab testings and whatnot, I think that there would like fuck. Like like this ties into the my second speaker case in which like uh there would be better security and certainty from the investor end, in which like uh proper lab testings have been made. And like investment is all about like security and certainty, right? Imagine yourself as like an investor. Would you invest in Apple more, or would you invest in Samsung bringing out flip phones more? It's There would be a high percentage of people who would be more likely to invest in like a company that has been that has a good enough reputation to like continuously launch out products that have been tested and well received by people, as opposed to a phone that would flip and somehow break by the 30th flip or something. That would and only then would more investments come in, more funding come in, and that ultimately brings about like better research, better innovation of the technological scene at the end of the day. And also like uh I want to talk about this like the diversity of innovation point that they've thrown at us. As we believe that as long as there is a need, for example, urgency, or as long as there is monetary gain from like a piece of technology, companies would ultimately still diversify their innovation into areas where they can earn money, and thus diversity of innovation would still happen, although at a slower rate under our side, under the side of government. And fuck with that, go outside government.
Alright, okay.
Hey Vignesh, go to the toilet lah. Can I mean yeah, I know your case lah. But I cannot come back in lah. I go after my flight.
Yeah, true. I was thinking about that as well.
Hey,
Oh
but
wait,
terkencing here means
you have your Dasani bottle in front of you.
air pipe with that one.
Two bottles in front of you. Or is you Vignesh, you have two?
No. Oh my
Why?
I know. The only thing I'm going to break today is my fast at 7:30. I think I think there's explicit problem comes from side opposition and upside government, and why exactly they cannot win this debate. I think the main problem is that they're a bit like wishy-washy with how they want to characterize investors. I think they was very like contradictory about how they say that investors are going to be really prudent and then not invest in things that are really bad. But then they also say how investors are going to like fund these things, and that's why suddenly people are going to die. I think is that it like they just give us two characterizations and don't give us any analysis as to which one is probably the most viable one. I think we tell you the answer, and it's probably more likely that these people are going to act as safeguards. Why is this the case? Because I think it's very intuitive to say that you as an investor is not going to invest into a product that is literally going to kill people and has like so much risk on it. I'm not sure why you as an investor would do that. Or even if you don't buy the example, the safeguards are still there in the fact that I as a technology company obviously don't want to get sued for like liabilities and things like that. Why would I, as a technology company, who's going to sell this and then be responsible for it, be so careless to release a product that's probably going to like a very high chance of killing people and then risk getting sued in the long run? It's just not something that most companies are going to do. We say that the harms are probably going to be more minor things such as like side effects or future effects that have not been tested yet. That's why this debate takes place. So what are the actual metrics in this debate? I think one, the first metric is probably about what also government pushes a lot, but who actually gets like the most economic benefit, i.e. who gets the most investors. So what does this look like on their side? They say that on their side they get better investors, the point in which it's more safer and like more research, because then you can like basically tell the investor this is my entire plan for the thing, we're going to sell it to you. Investors have more confidence because it's probably not going to be like really shittily done or hastily done or put together, and that's where they get the money in, which is something they can buy intuitively. But I think the point in which we challenge you by saying what is the comparative? Because sure you can get like you can package something to them and then the investor probably buys into it. But we're not sure why that's something that won't happen on our side as well, because this can easily be substituted by giving them prototypes. Like as Kavi mentioned before, you're just as likely to get investors to buy into your stuff if you just like release chapter 1 of something and then they see like okay, chapter 1 works, and then you give us a plan, so you're going to do chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. It's very likely then for investors to buy in because you're already giving them a product that they're shown to be working, and you're giving them a plan. Whereas on your side, you might actually be less likely for them to invest because the point which you're selling them something that's going to happen 10 years of the future and you have no practical like model to show them, that's the point which are probably likely to be more skeptical. But even if this isn't the case, we tell you why, at least more companies on our side get investments. Because now on your side, you're pushing basically to companies who have the capital to provide a 20 years look into the future. Companies that have that 20 years worth of research that they can plan from now are the only companies going to get sponsorships or investors on your side. On our side, it's much easier for smaller companies, startup companies to actually who only have enough money or capital to actually like work on 5 years worth of research, 2 years worth of research, or just 1 year's worth of research, and it works. These are the companies that only on our side exclusively get these investments because they're able to actually push these things out. On your side, these investors are never likely going to see these people because the people will never want to do that. They'll be too scared to release something that's only had 1 year worth of research, 2 years worth of research on their side. We say investors are probably, at least on terms of scale, more people get investments on our side. Moving on to the next point about actual like quality of the product. And I think this ties with also about an economic benefit versus monopolies. We tell you why. We tell you why. On your side, you're more likely to get monopolies. Because the point in which you raise the barrier of entry into especially these nascent industries, which are usually the urgent ones where people are trying to raise the into, and you raise the barrier of entry to like probably companies who have enough capital to produce as good research to actually enter it, is the point which you're likely to get these people who cement their place there. And the people cementing like the first movers advantage on your side are really big companies who have so much funding behind them and are never going to be toppled. So the point which the first like company to move into your market or your place is one that's very in a good position to establish a monopoly that can last forever, is the point which you're going to basically lock out other people. Why is this bad? Because obviously if you have a monopoly, you have less incentive for to actually innovate. Companies who already have a hold on the market is less likely to make their products more user friendly. Like sure, they'll make sure it's safe and they can't get sued for whatever damages happen, but there's no incentive then for them to want to like innovate so that more people like have like people who have different experiences can suddenly like use it better or like just make it more user friendly. As long as it works and no one can sue them for any damages, they're probably likely not to innovate as much because no one else is there to compete with them. On our side, we give you the competitive advantage where the movers, the first movers are people who can be challenged, who can challenge other people, and that's where you get innovation on our side. You get diversity to the point in which you have multiple companies actually vying for this first movers advantage, multiple companies who are on equal ground, equal standing and have an equal opportunity. That's when you get different sort of things, and that's when you get innovation. So I move on to the final point if you want.
Even if you can pitch your investors the whole plan, if you continue to iterate with no end, won't the investors just think you're full of shit?
It won't be full of shit because you're releasing a product to the market. In fact, it's probably you're less likely to be seen full of shit because you're actually giving them a product. On your side, it's more likely telling them, okay, in 20 years, this is the product that will become, that will be produced, but we can't release it to the public until then, so you won't know. You have to invest now and then see later, or just wait until 20 years, and by then probably someone else might have already done something. You might lose your investors in the long run. So what's the final point of this? Moving on, actually, yeah, in terms of quality of product, we tell you what the impact is, you actually just get better user interfaces. Because the point on your side is that you get a certain disconnect. The point which you are making things that are already set in stone. All these rules are always there. We say we've had 20 years of research to do it, there's not going to be any changes on things, and then you release it to the market. Sure, most people probably enjoy it because they don't even give a shit about the nuances of it. But the point which you have users who like don't like certain aspects or feel that it's not entirely user friendly to them in their experiences because everyone is different, is the point which you're less likely to get these changes on your side because they're just going to say like, oh, we've had 20 years worth of research on this, just accept it, it's safe. That's on our side where you release these things and then you actually have the point which the like the check and balance is the users who actually interact with these things. This is where you're more likely to get innovations that actually suit these people. The point which you release something after 1 year and then someone says like, oh, like for example ChatGPT or like, oh, this is something I can use for plagiarism, blah, blah, blah. And then this point which you actually understand that obviously people are going to complain about it, you're more likely to actually take these complaints and fix it so that users are more friendly, as opposed to another company who has done it for 20 years and just be like, we've already done 20 years of research, just please accept it, we've done all we can, that's it. On our side, we actually get a much better quality of product because there's less monopolies and people are more likely to actually take user complaints into consideration. So I think the final part, and this part that they don't touch upon at all, is about urgency, because I think this debate has to take place in industries that call for urgency. I don't think we're going to also have to defend every industry, every tech industry doing this. I don't think we have to defend don't know, like chocolate making tech suddenly rushing to make machines that will suddenly like have children drown in pools of chocolate or whatever. I don't think we'll have really Wonka's factory on our side. This probably looks like medical technology where the problems are really urgent, where you're forced to have to want to do this thing, and this is an incentive for you to want to do. And so why is it in these industries is very important. So I think it's just safe to say, if these problems are so prevalent and it calls for urgency, the worst thing that can happen on our side is that we fail, sure, and then the problem just stays. That's the worst thing that can happen on our side. On your side, when you cause stagnancy, you also get symmetrical, where you're just taking a long time to solve the problem. So for the next 10 years, the problem stays. We say that on worst cases, it's symmetrical. But we say that it's better to take the chance, where let's say for something for COVID, where you take the chance to actually try to solve these things. why you got like one shot and then a second shot and then suddenly a booster shot and then suddenly a second booster shot, because you have this trial and error, which you never would have gotten on your side. And this is exactly because of this trial and error they could actually curb like the spread of this pandemic or things like that. Things like cancer and all that, people are going to die anyway. We tell you that if you suddenly somehow kills them, you just kill them faster, or we're willing to take the chance that you can actually solve cancer or like alleviate their pains more. On your side, you're just leaving them to cancer forever. We tell you why. This is exactly why we take this debate brought to both.
Alright, Vignesh.
I think it was a pretty good debate and a pretty fun debate to have. There's a few issues that we need to address in the entirety of the debate, and I'm going to be like really charitable because I think that a lot of things that came out from inside the government in a vacuum exist as true and manifest as true in the round. The problem then, and what's going to be the immediate call out and also the clash analysis, is that certain things go critically unresponded to from inside the opposition firstly, but secondarily, even though they exist in a vacuum, they do not interact with each other in a way that is strategic. The first immediate call out is that it never answers the question that I posited to you from deputy and Kavi implicitly asked in medium opposition, which is what is the incentive towards wanting to invest in the technology that is necessarily going to be as harmful as they claim. They never managed to explain why these two things can exist, because while it is true that investors are prudent and that might be true in a vacuum, it cannot interact with the rest of their case, which is saying that these investors are likely going to bring about tech that leads to the destructions of dams, that leads to the destructions of individuals by cancer analysis, that leads to individuals dying on the ground. I think the point that this is true extension in the case panel that you need to mark, because even though we asked the question explicitly multiple times, the whip does not resolve with it, and I don't think that it's something that you can just be like, oh, we brought it up late, and therefore like they can just have tension in their case. I don't think that that's how that works. But I think that even if it is true that these things do happen, right, what we already mitigated for you is that even if the tech exists that leads to the potential of this, and this is where we're really smart, we say that it lies on the investor and the user interface to have that end experience. Meaning even if these things do exist and are invented, it is only at the point where it gets put into place that is problematic. I think that means that we immediately win on this analysis. But the second call out then is that they never engage with the diversification of the portfolio that we have on our side. Note that this came from LO and was completely unresponded to down the bench. They never engage with how diversification is something that is good, and it's exclusive to your side, the point where you have many firms in the market. But then again, they never engage with monopolization and in the long run how wide is bad. I think the point where that's true, and there's zero attempt to resolve this then, I think you already win on the long run. My analysis furthermore, this is going to be on the short run and why you can win on that as well. Let's do the first clash on solving harms now a bit or solving a lot in the future, which I think is a very big clash in the debate. They say that we posit harm to people, hence we are intrinsically bad for the event that some technology is going to be bad. Note panel that they never mechanized why this is something going to be true beyond the assertion and it's rushed. Secondarily then, that they solve it better because they can refine it, and WIP says that this is done with no user interference at all. So users give no input towards the end product and they have no updates. The third is accountability because you can hold them better. I want to completely take out the accountability thing because I want to bring you back to my speech when I tell you that it's only about this philosophy existing within the tech industry. They never proved why then that this will lead towards legislation shifting crucially panel. Negligence still exists, law still exists, meaning you can still hold people accountable on either side, meaning the entirety of PM speech just falls flat in that basis. But then I want to say, right, so I don't know why we're arguing about this, but secondly on the positing of harm, we already explained to you that in the event that this is something that happens in the first place, it is unclear what the delta is. If investors are so stupid to take this risk in the first place, unclear why then they wouldn't just invest in worse long-term tech in the long run. But secondarily, that even if all else being equal on this clash, we say the point where we have divergences into new industries, which comes out in hello, is the point where you get new nascent technologies within these industries, and that is an intrinsic benefit because you diversify tech and prevent monopolization. They say they solve it better. We say that it is not true that you can solve something better with user interface on the pure basis that you must check with the users and get some refined information from them. They can't say they're going to create this homogeneous product which a bunch of tech bros and tech geeks create. That's like saying that a debate manual created by the best debaters in the world is going to be really, really accessible to someone that enters debate. This isn't intuitively true. I think they lose around on this as well. Their tech is a better panel. I don't know why they're peddling assertions. Onto economics and monopolization. They say that economics is better because of volatility of the market and investors. We already explained why this is untrue in the second and third speaker. Zero response so far. Reply can't salvage on that. The other thing that they talk about is that it's better because, you as an economics person, you have to have like less volatile markets. We already explained to you this as well, panel. This happens in status quo. We are seeing no market volatility for the things in the first place. Maybe they are NFTs and stuff like that, but those are fringe things because they tie towards investors and cryptocurrency, which is a different financial topic rather than a tech industry thing intrinsically. But secondarily, we explain why it ties towards what the investors choose to do. We already won this debate on the basis of the long run panel. My analysis only gives you the short run, which we win as well. Never proud to oppose.
Yes, we go to that.
Woohoo!
Go for the last speaker today.
I think the first call out that, one of the call outs that Op makes to us is that why is there two different type of investor characteristics? But it can be both. Both can be true at the same time. Right? So we don't see why is that problematic, but they just say that because there's two is problematic. But let's go on with the most important metric here that I think both teams try to settle. Which consumers are better protected and whose corporations are likelier to get into trouble, right? Op misses and doesn't engage with how the philosophies would be mitigated just with early access tiered rollouts on their side. Because the only thing that they are able to use as a policy that mitigates harm is just the fact that it is early access tiered rollouts, right? And just let the public test it. They don't engage with the idea that due to the high likelihood of failure, people will be disincentivized from the get-go. From my read, it deals with that even if the tech works, people are likely to engage with early access tech because of rationalized fear of failure or even that newer tech that people don't realize that they need it. Like people when they see new things, they don't realize they actually need it until much, much later that a lot of other people adopt it. I don't think that this was explored sufficiently in Op's case, right? Then I think Op makes a mistake of under-mechanizing a lot of the benefits and harm that they claim is intuitive, especially like in their second speech. Okay. Now, the idea of why on their side tech companies aren't going to get into trouble. But the fact here is that my Prime Minister already told you that corporations can have legal impunity, and because of the philosophy that they are supposed to defend, they have to defend on the side that their companies would get into trouble because that is the philosophy that they're supposed to defend. I think it's a cop-out on their side when they say that we won't get into trouble because we won't get into trouble, when the fact is that your philosophy requires you to take the hard line to get into trouble, and that's part of the risk that you're supposed to take, right? So yeah. Right. Then they claim the idea that the investor is a safeguard who's harm to tech. I think this is under-mechanized because the incentive structure here looks like when investors are more likely than not have similar incentive structure as companies where they want maximizing profit. And again, they have protective safety nets through legal liability, and the defendant would be the company, not the investor that push them to make this kind of bad decisions to begin with. So we think that to say that the investor is a person who has some form of that they won't be harmed and they are the safeguard, we don't think that this is necessarily true, right? Largely on the idea of hegemonies and monopolies, right? Even the thing is that the thing on our side, and this is something that I spoke in my speech, hegemonies will still want to innovate because there's a need for profit maximization, which we characterize, means things are more likely, there are new iterations and program optimization. Bad, but it exists. This is something that actually exists, right? So not only do they lack of engagement in regards to this, but the premise here is that you're likely to encounter failure, which means you lack public, state, and investor support, which means you're less likely to succeed to fight against tech hegemonies and monopolies under their side of the house. Proud to
Last one, we can
finish makan. Oh, it's not actually not yet, yeah?
Come on, I think. Come on. Huh? Yeah. No. Oh no, not for the taste that overseas. Apa tak boleh congkak.
Tak puasa tak apa.